Saturday to go and participate in this. I hope that you've all signed the sign-in sheet right there. That's huh? Yeah, right. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's lawyer proving, and you know, I'm going to steer you around everything. I can tell you that this is actually an ADA compliant walkway tour that we're taking, so it's not going to end up being a problem. We have the cart that's right here. If you have anything that you want to throw into the cart while we're in the midst of the tour, we'll have to go through and tow that around. Inside the cooler, there are water bottles. They are cooled down, and I offer those to you to go through and take advantage of, because quite frankly, you know, an hour and a half can be a long time to go through and do that. We are going to make a circle from here. We're going to end up just down the road, so it's going to be a circle, if you will. If you need to drop off, no skin off my back. I really want to make certain that this is something that is of value to you, and you know, we'll go through and pursue it that way. And the only bad questions that are out there are the ones that you don't ask. I do not claim to have all the answers, but if you ask me a question, I will find out. I'll incorporate that to other ones, and I would appreciate, you know, that sort of feedback out there. For those of you that have lived here for a number of years and whatnot, please go through and offer your insights into that. I've got my post-it notes that I'll put on the back of this to be able to go through and incorporate it into future tours and whatnot. This tour itself is going to end up being a compare and contrast. So what was as opposed to what is right now. So we ended up meeting here at the Plaza. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but you'll notice the hexagonal patterns on not only the band platform, but also on the bathroom facility. This is integral to Cotati. Cotati is weird. Exactly, yes. And I've gotten a contact from the last tour about a shirt. I'm waiting to get that shirt. The reason why I wear tie-dye, because I think that's kind of weird too. You know, but that was back in the day. So let's give you a little background about what Cotati is. So Cotati is right here, and you'll notice it's right in the middle of a hexagonal plate, if you will. This was originally a Spanish land grant. It became a Mexican land grant. Originally, what were up here were the Miwok Indians. They were supposedly here from 10,000 BC up until the time that folks came into here, which was around the 1830s, 1840s, and unfortunately they, much like most native cultures, did not have the immunities to the diseases that were brought by the Europeans. They were decimated about that. There still is, you know, a culture out there. There is a rancheria out there that I will never go to because I don't believe anything that they talk about, but that's beside the point. Cotati was actually spelled with a K, K-O-T-A-T-E. And in the Miwok language, that meant to punch. Punch, yeah.
The word Cotati.
Exactly, yes. We have no idea exactly where that came from. And we continue to try and go through and unravel, you know, the history, if you will, about this. But you know, that's where the original name came from. Cotati with a K ended up being a hard sell, and that's the reason why they changed it to a C, because it made it a lot easier for, you know, marketing the town of Cotati itself.
I got a question for you.
Sorry?
I got a question.
Yes.
So, I thought that maybe I saw a sign somewhere with a Chief Cotati, like it was an Indian chief's name. Is that real or not real?
We'll talk about that in 2 stops.
Okay.
I promise you.
Good question.
Yeah. So, you know, this was originally, you know, a land grant, and the land grant came through many different hands. Now, in order to go through and maintain that land grant, you had to go through and create a homestead. That meant you had to live here for a year and actually build a building to be able to go through and claim this particular property. Now, the first person who tried to do that is a gentleman by the name of John Reed. He has a school named after him here in Cotati. The very first year that he was out here, the Miwok Indians ended up going through and practicing what they have been doing from time immemorial about agricultural land, in that they would burn the fields. Well, it burned down his house. So John Reed retreated. John did not establish a homestead. Don't feel too sorry for John, because John ended up going down to San Francisco, then received another land grant for a little place called Mill Valley, just a little south of here. And it was called Mill Valley because of the fact that John Reed had the mill in Mill Valley. Now, John rioted for a period of time, but he ended up succumbing because of bloodletting back in the day. He had apparently some sort of disease that was out there, and they basically bled him to death. Sad ending, but that's part of the history that we have out here. It was next granted to Captain Juan Castaneda, who was the General Secretary for General Vallejo, who you may have heard of. It's a town named after him. He did not create a homestead. It next ended up going to the first and only council for Alta California, which is what this was called when Mexico ended up taking it over. Now, I say that for the very simple reason that it only lasted for a short period of time. You may have seen the California public flag. This was the original California public flag, flown just 20 miles to the east of us right here in Sonoma County. And the reason why was because in 1848, gold was discovered in Sutter Mill, and everybody was flocking in. Now, this ended up creating quite a problem for the folks that ended up having land grants, because Mexico was no longer in charge of this. So who actually was, when it came down to being able to go through and provide ownership to the land itself? This land, Cotati itself, that plate that I was showing you before, was bought by Thomas Page. Again, Thomas Page has a school named after him. He was the founder of here. But Thomas Page bought this sight unseen. Thomas Page lived in Valparaiso, Chile. He was a doctor. He had two kids that were doctors that were going through and practicing medicine down there. They ended up buying it, again, sight unseen. They came into it. It took over 10 years for them to go through and clear the title. Most of the folks that ended up going through and petitioning to go through and have the title cleared ended up losing the properties that they had out there, just because of the fact that they could not establish provenance, if you will. The fact that this was their land, that they had gone through it and they had paid for it.
Yeah, what year was that?
1848.
Oh,
Yep, exactly when gold was discovered.
oh.
Right,
Who
exactly.
did Page buy it from? Who did he pay the money to?
He originally paid it to Mexico, because Alta Mexico was part of Mexico at that particular point, or Alta California was part of Mexico at that time. But he had to go through and prove that provenance, and that ended up having to go through the Board of Land Commissioners / the U.S. Surveyor General. And trust me, they were not friendly about that particular part.
How would he even have known about it?
Well, he had to go through and wind through that particular part. Now, Thomas Page didn't really stay here in Cotati. He didn't stay in the rancheria that was right here. Thomas Page was a socialite. He actually spent most of his time in San Francisco. And it, again, bought it sight unseen. In 1857, it was conferred back to him. So, almost 10 years after he ended up having to go through and fight for this, he ended up having this provenance established out here. And Cotati became what it is right now. And so you'll notice that we are in a hexagon. Now, if you take a look at the Wikipedia page for Cotati, they talk about this is one of two cities in the United States that have hexagons. No. One was Detroit. They had a plan, or a concept of a plan, but it never ended up getting enacted. I mean, everything was always, north, south, east, west. This is the only one in the United States that actually ended up becoming a hexagon. And you can see this from the air. I've seen it several times as I've been flying north, and it's always been, I'm home, or very shortly going to end up being there. What the Page family did was they ended up conferring this as being a public space, La Plaza. And so while they did end up having a barn here at one particular point in time, they actually ended up turning this over to the people, and this became a huge thing for the locals that are out here. Now, I want to point out how unique it is that we are a hexagon. So I've done a lot of research, and I've seen a couple of towns and whatnot that are out there, mostly over in Italy, that have some semblance of a hexagon. This is the only one, though, that is viable right now. This is in Grand Michel, Sicily, founded in 1693. As opposed to just 2 rings that are out there, they have 13 rings. You'll also notice that rather than having traffic going out through the corners, this ends up having traffic going out through the centers right here. So again, a little bit different out there, but these are the 2 major ones that are here in the entire world. And I just want to go through and point that out. So, as I said, this was a community space out here. St. Joe's, the original St. Joe's, which is just down the road right here. They and other civic organizations would end up having barbecues and whatnot that would take place out here, and they were huge fundraisers for the church, for the local city government as well, to be able to go through and collect whatever funds that those wanted to do. But this was an annual event. It no longer is, but whatever. So let's talk about what's behind you, and again, what used to was. Cotati is over here, and I'm just going to flat out say that. There have been a lot of countercultural people that have been around here, and a lot of stuff has been erected overnight that existed for a number of years that, quite frankly, never went through any planning, never went through any approval or whatnot, but never got quite torn down. So what you see behind here again is a hexagon. There's a gentleman by the name of Vito Palakis. I always mispronounce that name. He was, quite frankly, the original hippie, and had gone through and done things that we thought were important for the local folks that were out here. They ended up erecting this particular band stage overnight without approval, and it stood for easily 20 years. It was replaced in 1993 with what you see right now, which is the current bandstand that we have, and with full electrical and everything else. So let's go through and get out of these people's hair. Let's wander down towards the statue over there in the corner. The reason why I'm doing this stuff right now is because it's quieter and by the street. It'll get a little bit noisier as we end up going out there. Again, if you have questions, if you don't understand anything that I'm talking about, please tell me, because I would like to be able to go through and impart a little bit of knowledge and hopefully you guys enjoy what the heck we're doing. So, Marie, this is my cohort. So again, if you have anything you want to throw into the cart, that's fine. If you want to go through and haul out of water, please go ahead and do that. They're freely offered. Not towing people. Sorry. We have to draw the line somewhere. Okay, so let's go down to the statue over there. This is a statue of Jim Baggio. Jim was at one time considered to be one of the top 3 accordionists in the United States, or the world. Yeah. He had a local band called Swamp Dog, which played around here. This got erected in the middle of the night. Again, no city approval. Just basically got floated in, and the next day they woke up and suddenly there's a statue that's out there. Exactly right. Why wait for approval? There has been some conjecture about the fact that maybe there's an accordion here. There is not. It is a very faithful representation, but it is entirely hollow. There is no accordion inside of it. Jim was actually integral to the Cotati Accordion Festival, which has been going on, since 1991. He unfortunately passed away in '96. He was able to go through and apply, enough capital to be able to go through and promote that. And it really is one of the biggest things. If you're an accordionist, and I am not, but I respect that particular part. If you end up coming in here, I think it's August when they typically end up having it. For the locals, we run away. That always used to be our cue to go through and make a camping reservation, get the heck out of town, because everything's blocked off. You can't go that way, and it used to be, if you were local, you could get in. Well, it rapidly ended up turning into a money-making type proposition, and so great music. I hear it when I pass by, but I don't pay any. I don't.
Yeah, because I was going to take you
Yes.
here. It was free, and that's why I went. And then after that, it was kind of like a reasonable price, but now it's just lower for $100 or $100.
Exactly. Yeah.
Get in.
Really? It's only like 20
me, it was just because of the aggravation of trying to get middle of town and whatnot.
It's actually, I
Get the heck out of town.
Super fun. There's a polka tent, there's dancing. One of these bars has Zydeco music. There's 2 stages always going.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Lots of arts and crafts and things like
Yeah,
that.
lots of stuff for sale.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. It's worth checking out.
Yep. So let's go ahead and cross the street. And I'll answer the question about Chief Cotati. I'm not saying that it's going to be hotter than we're in that back So, here is Chief Cotati. This is the only Chief Cotati that there is, because there was no Chief Cotati. That was actually a marketing gimmick that was done back in the 60s and 70s to go through and try and build that up. There was no Chief Cotati. Now, the statue itself, it's got, kind of a unique history. It is concrete with rebar inside of it, but the concrete was never sealed. And so it was sitting out here all by itself. That structure was not there. And what was happening was that there was water penetration going into it. Now, if you know what concrete rebar does, when you end up getting water penetration going in, the rebar swells up because it rusts. And it was breaking that apart. They actually thought that was not going to make it to 2000. Well, here we are, 2025, still here. They ended up going through and resealing it. The local tribe went through and donated funds to be able to go through and provide the structure over the top of it. So it probably has got another good 25, whatever years to go on this right now. Yeah, exactly. No. I think it was the Great Rancheria or their predecessors that went through and helped contribute to that. There's a lot cliche stuff that has happened about that. That's the reason why I would never get it. Because they're throwing money left and right because of my influence. I appreciate part of what they're trying to do because it's a record. But again, buying influence. Exactly. Yeah. That brown seal that you see around it right there is not the original that was on there. It has been resealed, and it will end up as the bed. Now, before we end up across the street, again, they're in contrast. What you see right there was this. And Robert Ross, I was contacted actually by his great grandson for a dialogue about additional information. I've not been able to talk to him about it. Robert Ross was kind of the mover and shaker here back in the early days, as we ended up coming into the 20th century. He had a lot of stores that he had out here going down Redwood Highway itself. And there was actually a movie theater that he ran over here. If you want to end up taking a further look, his house is around the corner. It's one of the most unusual buildings that you'll ever end up seeing. It was taken over in the 70s. It ended up having a hot tub. I was thinking, so hot tub that was put in the middle of the floor inside of that. Again, things end up changing. So Robert Ross was a mover and shaker. He was also cheap as hell. His kids and whatnot that would end up being the proprietors of the theater, the store, so on and so forth. They never got paid. And his wife passed away under somewhat uncertain circumstances, and he married his husband. That said, Robert overreached. He ended up dying broke in Oakland because he had no money whatsoever. He got wiped out. And, again, that's kind of the story about Robert. So, now, I can't speak to that. I don't know. I've not. But, I told you I have my post-it notes. Yeah, which makes sense, but I'm not sure that that's entirely Quail. Certainly is, yeah. As I said, I want to end up finding out more every time that I take these walks. I hope that I end up learning as much as hopefully you guys end up getting from this. Well, you're talking about Fort Ross.
To give it some status.
Yep.
Which way we going?
Yeah, just walk straight down. Just walk straight.
Doesn't look like the
Interesting name.
Well, again, it's native materials they're using, and I'm sure that somewhere along the line,
It looks like you're gonna need
the city council's going to have to go through and step up.
You know, this whole thing.
It's the outlining what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
6 of Thomas Page's sons. And as I said, 2 of them never ended up coming up here. They stayed down Valparaiso. Wilford, who was the eldest and kind of the mover and shaker, ended up having a street that was named for him over by where Outback used to be, and I think it's right now.
Wilford Avenue. Wilford Avenue.
Yeah, Wilford Avenue, but it goes around Walmart. What's the?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's a steakhouse basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There we go.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's it.
I always need assist.
So these are one of the hexagon streets, like this one, this one over there. So it's making that.
There's an inner hexagon, and if you take a look at the map right now, you won't see a total hexagon because of fire building and whatnot, but there were 2 hexagons.
They changed that.
So the hexagon, but then this is still kind of body
Yep.
down that way.
And we'll talk about that
The
too.
hexagon's just in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's an outer hexagon.
There were 2 hexagons.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one right here, and then there was one interior.
Okay.
Okay. So what you see right here on the corner was the fact that there was a hotel. There was that building right there. Cotati ended up moving around quite a bit. They would end up moving buildings, literally picking them up and moving them. To wherever it was advantageous for them to be able to go through and situate them. That one actually ended up moving back a block, and then somewhere along the line it got destroyed. And before we move on, I wanted to go through and share, the couple of off-site type things out there, because if we were to go through everything out here, it would be on 4 hours, and I want to spare that. However, Cotati actually used to have a serious raceway. This was an IndyCar style raceway, or you could consider that to be an F1 raceway. That was over by where the Smart Train depot is on East Cotati. It was made of 3 million board feet of redwood. It was not, a flat dirt track. It was not paved or anything like that. It was a raised, angled-in track for folks to be able to go through and do that. It was one of, quite frankly, it was an engineering marvel at the time. They ended up doing that because of the fact that, nobody was doing it. It only lasted for a year and a half. And the reason being, so we have the railway that's out there right now that Smart Train is currently using. That train, though, didn't take you into San Francisco. It took you to Sausalito. And you had to end up getting onto a ferry. Or if you ended up driving down the road, it would end up taking you down to Sausalito. And you ended up having to go through and get across to the other side of the bay. And when they were running these races out there, it typically was the rainy season. Now, anybody who lives around here, anybody? You know what it's like in your backyard when you get a little bit of rain out there? Oh, it's quite murder. And that was the experience that a lot of folks ended up having, was the fact that they could not go through and be able to go end to end. So the raceway only lasted for a year and a half. And it was $1.50 admission back in 1920 when they had that open. That would be equal to about $25 today. I would love to go to an F1 or an IndyCar race for $25. You can't do that. But the wood itself, from that, again, Cotati ends up recycling everything. They recycle buildings. In this case, they recycled the wood that was on the track. And that wood is in several of the shops that are around here. If you've gone down to the Redwood Cafe, the flooring that's out there, and they actually will go through and call that out, was part of that original racetrack out there. That place is burned down at least 3 times. Down to the floor, never below the redwood floor. And they've always rebuilt it. Okay. So, this is the current building that was at the time, the Cotati Hotel, Cotati Inn. It was built in 1932, Spanish style. It was renowned for their duck dinners. Does anybody remember Herb Cain? Yeah. Okay. He used to rave about this place. And so they did great business as a result of that. I'm a musician myself. I've played in what is now their Spanky's. It's a wonderful place to play, great people, so on and so forth.
Well, I noticed a sign because now live music.
Yep.
Is it every day or is it weekends?
Typically the weekends. I don't know about the middle of the week. I'm sure they do have something that's out there.
Could be.
So let's walk down again just a little bit further.
Yeah, no.
So, part of this thing out here, and again, same style building and whatnot, was the end of the beginning. The end of the beginning was basically a stadium type scene thing out there. They actually did a wonderful job in going through and setting that up. And back in the day, most tours would end up coming through Cotati before they end up back terminating in San Francisco. So this was one last place for them to be able to go through and make a little scratch. There are 2 recording studios that are here in Cotati, and Prairie Sun and Zone Music. So a lot of bands would go through and would end up doing one last show here and maybe stick around for just a little bit to be able to go through and record something new and take it back into San Francisco without all the congestion and whatnot. I've heard conjecture that, so those that may know the song by Creedence Clearwater, Stuck in Lodi Again, was actually stuck in Cotati again. But they had fantastic acts that came through here. I mean, Van Morrison, Santana, New Riders and Purple Sage, Jefferson Airplane, The Tubes, Steppenwolf, Huey Lewis and the News, Neil Young and Crazy Horse, Lightning Hopkins, Buddy Guy, John Lee Hooker, and Greg Kihn, amongst others. So it ran from September '68 until February '76. Again, sign of the times. Why are we not dealing with 8-track tapes right now? Why are we not typing things on selector typewriters? Things change. Exactly. Yeah.
Wasn't the in the beginning over where the synagogue is, and this is just the sign?
Nope. That was the end of the beginning. You're talking about the Cotati Cabaret, and we will touch on that.
Oh yeah, I got it mixed up.
It's okay.
I always thought
That's
that
why I'm here.
Yeah, I always thought it was the other.
Yep. So this is always a crapshoot when I come in here. But right here. I think they cut slow down on their progress. So let's see what's going on.
Oh, no, I'm good for now. Thanks.
was a restaurant bar and it shut down.
Yeah, it was Friar Tuck's afterwards, and it's been a couple of other places in between. So this is the Sandal Lady. And the Sandal Lady, Fran Fleet was her name, or is her name. I don't know her current status. She opened this up in the 60s, and it was around woodwork, it was around candles, it was around sandals. In the 70s, she started working on baseball gloves. And she was a phenomenon when it comes down to this. She ended up having not only local teams that would end up going through and give the gloves, she was taking care of the Major League Baseball. She was also taking care of the Japanese league as well. And you can see right here, nothing but baseball gloves above her. And she ended up having a real thriving business. She eventually folded up though during COVID. And the reason why, if you take a look inside, there is no toilet.
Oh.
She was dependent upon Friar Tuck's at the time to be able to go through and provide her with a toilet. And when they ended up going bankrupt and folded, she had no place to go through and do that. So she decided, well, no, I can't make a go of that. And
She could have brought a bucket.
yeah, been there, done that. Nah.
That's a pretty big space. That's a pretty big space in there. I expected it smaller.
It is. If you take a look in there, you can see the fact that they've gone through and they've drywalled the back of it.
Yes.
And I think at some point they're going to end up finishing that. But every time that I come out here, it looks like it's exactly the same. So I don't see any progress. I don't know what's going on. You see the trash and whatnot going out right there.
So who's the owner of this property right here, right now?
I don't know. There's an application right in front for a liquor license, and I don't know who it is.
I heard, and I don't know this is accurate, that the people that from ayahuasca and Petaluma purchased those?
They've done.
Ayahuasca.
So again, it's just part of the local history that we have around here. I know somebody who's on city council. I need to poke her though.
It is a nice one.
Well, exactly. It's sitting there. It's not
Like they started it and they walked away. Yeah, it's just some framing for some construction.
Good for
No,
concrete,
not even-
whatnot,
no,
for a
it's
central
exterior.
shaft for elevator and whatnot.
And it just like barely got started and then it's gone.
Yeah, it's trumpeted and whatnot. So.
For a year.
Exactly. And I thought it was supposed to be done by the end of last year. All right, so let's walk down a little bit further. And then we'll start doubling back.
Wow. 5 different. This is good, Jack. It's expensive now. This is a gas station.
Yeah, you could probably end up going into one of the parking lots. the actual building that you're seeing behind me.
Looks like it.
And it was a gas station. I'll talk about gas stations and whatnot in a second, but this was the original building. There was a real problem they had with flood control going back into when the town was actually founded, and that was not resolved until the 1950s. As you can see, literally everything ended up getting stuck. Now, Einstein's is a wonderful place. They're not open on Saturdays, and I really hate that. And I'm trying to go through and negotiate with them about opening up, for a little period of time, because they are great ambassadors for the city of Cotati itself. And they end up giving out free stickers and so on and so forth. They've designed a Keep Cotati Weird shirt, which I'm trying to get a hold of. But they are great custodians. Quite frankly, the facility, but is no longer a gas station, as you can see.
And they're great sign makers.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that up in the museum? Is that?
Sorry?
There's a gas tank.
Right over here. Depot was built in 1937. It's been largely unchanged. Spankings, and then it's a bar. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And I just love the picture.
Oh, okay, the 8 ball. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Exactly.
I didn't see the guy lying on the sidewalk.
Yeah. And again, it was comedic. It was, but I thought that was a great representation that was out there. There actually, was an airfield that was right behind that at one particular point in time. A lot of illegal things, again, here in Cotati. They didn't ask for permission, they asked for forgiveness. And they ended up having a couple of aircraft and whatnot that crashed there. And of course, when liability finally started becoming something for them to be concerned about, Delta would take care of that. It is still owned by the same folks, or the same family that went through and started at the beginning. Yeah. And so, looking across the street, where Mama's Pizza is, you don't see it as clearly as you used to, but there used to be 2 entrances into that. And one was Tamarama's, the other one was the Brambles. One offered ice cream cones for kids, the other one was a head shop. And you had to be sure which door you were going in if you're bringing in the kids back in the day. So, looking at this stretch right here that you see in front of you, Redwood Highway, this actually used to be the predecessor to Highway 101. They campaigned really long and hard. Petaluma Hill Road and Stony Point were the other 2 contenders that were out here. But this ended up becoming de facto main road from Petaluma all the way up to Santa Rosa back in the day. And so there were a lot of gas stations, garages, hotels, restaurants, and whatnot that were around here. That'll change back in 55 to 57 when they ended up putting in the Cotati Grade, Highway 101 going around here. And like so many small towns, suddenly they ended up being adrift and all the businesses kind of just disappeared because there was no business to be had. This was a backwater once again. And so again, taking a look at that corner place right there, that was the original post office. It's been a real real estate office, Greyhound station. Who remembers Greyhound? Exchange Bank, which has been a local Sonoma County. They're no longer there.
But the building is.
It is. Yep.
It was the only bank in Sonoma County robbed 5 times, once every year.
Actually, 7 times.
7 times, oh yeah.
7 times.
Yeah, but I knew the first robber.
Yep.
Is he one of your friends?
What does that say about you?
He was a friend of one of our tenants.
Okay. And again, the cyclical thing about Cotati is the fact that they end up moving as need be. They move down a little bit further down the road. I'll show you that place shortly. They currently are over by Oliver's. That particular post office is one of the top 3 in the United States as far as customer service is concerned. Yep.
Top 3.
So, looking at the Redwood Cafe, this again was what it looked like back in the day. It's a local business. It's been a pharmacy, general store, and soda fountain, a student co-op, several small stores. You've heard of Sonoma State? Sonoma State students and whatnot were part of the counterculture that was out here. As a matter of fact, at one particular point in time, there were 3 members of the city council that were from Sonoma State until they all got busted for marijuana.
Including the mayor.
Yep, exactly. It's been a cafe, movie house, and right now it is the Redwood Cafe, and quite frankly, lovely food. If you have the opportunity, the time to go through and take that in, I heartily recommend that. You know, I've not been to Bombo's. I don't know what their gig is, but Cafe Salsa and Super Burger and Tiny Time, I wholeheartedly recommend it.
What year is that?
This would have been back in the early 1900s. And
It was Lipton's through the 60s.
yeah, that building actually was, again, a building that was moved from further to the east, came back down around, it was relocated here. But again, the flooring inside of it is from the old racetrack. And Redwood is wonderful in the fact that it doesn't burn terribly well. So it has burned down several times, but it never burned down. So let's start walking back. Yes. So, somewhat selfishly, this is where we ended up selling our house through, just for full disclosure and whatnot. But you can see where it says Marketplace over there. Does that building look at all like what you see right now? Okay. So it was robbed 7 times in 21 years. The reason why it typically was robbed was because of the fact that, again, we have a hexagon. Instead of 4 ways to get away, you have 6 ways to get away. However, every single robber, except for one, was captured. The one that was not captured was shot to death by one of his accomplices. Exactly. Yeah. It looked like an easy turn. It turned out not to be. Let's walk down again a little bit. So I need to contact my friend and find out what the heck is going on. So this is that building right there. Now it has been a garage at one particular point in time, with housing up above that. And when it was a garage, I would not have wanted to live there, just because it was a fire trap. You'll notice the winds, as they call it right now. That used to be the trade winds. I don't understand the name change that's on that. The trade wind, for folks that might be familiar with Bar Rescue on Paramount, which is basically Jack Taffer coming in and whipping people into shape. That was featured on that particular series back in October of 2016. And it was brutal. They usually are when it comes down to it. But you just don't understand business and whatnot. The guy had been trusted with that, spent all of his day drinking over here at Spanky's, and then he'd end up going back over there and his business was going crap. So, let's move on just a little bit further up the front.
We need to come here more often so we can eat at some of these places again.
Okay.
I didn't even know the coffee shop was there. Drive past it all the time and don't look.
That's okay. But you can look over your shoulders. This was the original fire department right across the street. You can see the building doesn't look anything like it did back then. It was built back in the early 1900s. The original chief was Bert Chadwick. He served from 1919 to 1967. He lived and worked within one block. I believe he lived right there in the corner unit. He had a business over there in the next block over. It was a combination barbershop and bar. But if the fire alarm rang, he would leave your shave or whatnot, or your drink, right on top of the table. He would run, jump on the fire truck, and when you were coming back, or when he came back, hopefully you guys can end up settling up, but he was firmly committed to the fire department itself. This was a volunteer fire department until I think the early 90s, when it ended up becoming associated with Rancho Adobe, which was down Pembroke on Redwood. Yeah, exactly. Again, kind of that colorful history that we have with Cotati, in the fact that you don't have to go through settle the bill before you jump on the fire engine. He would trust you to be able to go through and take care of that. So we're going to end up going up to the intersection, cross the street, and then go back up. So make an L turn on that one too. talks about Chief Cotati, and as I mentioned, Chief Cotati did not exist. So they're looking to go through and have that redone. But there's a number of plaques that are out there. The head that you see out there is Athena. Yep. And it was taken down a couple of years ago and residuals was now back. Donated work or on loan work. And there for perpetuity until they decide otherwise. Cotati ended up becoming its own city back in 1963 because they realized that sometimes they go to the big town and the park is and the park started to get big and the park seemed like annex of the city at the time. So the vote was kind of overwhelming. Cotati still remains the smallest incorporated city in Sonoma County. Okay, there we go. Sonoma State, which is over that way, originally was proposed for what's called A section. Runner Park has been doing their development by letter, A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. And originally it was supposed to be a 4-year college, not a university. It ended up becoming a university eventually, back in '78, joining the Cal State system, and offers degrees and whatnot in high standing. There was a lot of campaigning back and forth about who was going to own the land that the property was on for the state university that was out there. Cotati was unsuccessful about that, but so was Roner Park. You know, that if you take a look at that, they say that it is Roner Park. It's outside the Roner Park city limits. It is in unincorporated land. So.
Incorporated? Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yep. Things that you learn when you end up going through and poking buttons.
Yeah.
So, what I want to call your attention to right now, street. This was originally the Women's Improvement. This was built in 1909. It was built, expanded, refloored, and whatnot, all by women-funded loans. Now, back in the early 1900s, women didn't go to banks. They didn't end up going through and getting loans. This was one that they ended up taking out 3 loans and paid them all back. It was unheard of at the time for them to be able to go through and do that sort of thing out there because it was a male-dominated society. You didn't end up having that out there. So I want to point out that particular part. So to the question about the end of the beginning, this ended up becoming the Cotati Cabaret back in '81. And that lasted until '92. And there were a lot of great acts that went through. I remember coming up here on the Executive stretch. I was living in San Rafael at the time. But it was worth it to see some good shows. So Martha Reeves, the Vandellas, Spencer Davis Group, Edgar Winter with Rick Garrigan. Blue Oyster Cult, again Neil Young, this time with the Blue Notes, Tower of Power, Foghat, Devo, Todd Rundgren, Marty Ballin with Paul Kantner in one version of Starship or Airplane, and Dave Mason. And it unfortunately, just like everything else, it's cyclical. It ended up losing, its gusto and whatnot. It was bought in '94. North Shalom, which is one of the most progressive organizations that I run across. They believe in music, they believe in fellowship and whatnot. And if you do live around here, I encourage you to go over there because they celebrate life. It isn't all just about religion and so on and so forth. They believe in people, and I think that's wonderful. So let's walk up a little bit further. I will tell you. This was the Odd Fellows building back in the day. So, I mean, they were kind of the equivalent of the Masons or whatnot. They were a fraternal organization. Built in 1911. Sold in 1957. Sold to an auctioneer slash real estate agent. Jim Dorfman. He sold it to Loudon Career. And full public disclosure, I've spent more money inside of this place than I really care to admit. My wife wants to acknowledge it. But when they ended up I'm excellent. Really good friend of mine, fellow guitarist. We're buddies. And so this was basically a resurrection of local music down the road. Zone Music tried to go compete with major music places and whatnot, and they were trying to sell guitars that were brand new. They couldn't compete. Loud and Clear found a model, which was basically consignment, and they did a wonderful job of it. As I said, I spent more money than I wanted to get here, but I heard it. I'm thinking right here. If you take a look inside, you can see just what a wonderful job they've done inside. It is really.
Wasn't this also a Grand Station?
It may have been at one point. I've been sick. Yeah. Two. And one that was given to me when I was 18 years old by all my friends. And I bought.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
See what they was having?
Oh, yeah.
Come on, Shadow. Let's
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at your bass speakers again. I had a
No idea. This is standing here like this.
It's their back room. Yeah. Yeah. Office. Just, God, it's really, it's something.
Like your acoustic thing?
This is really, and even,
Oh, wow.
even like the mics.
Shine blocks away.
Passive.
Black dog or shadow, yeah.
There's like one of you. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you mind helping me press that?
You got that.
People that want to sell them, put them up for a price, and then they
Yeah, and then they take the commission.
This is a simple building, so it's around
that's, yeah, that's the company. Well, that's a good way, because it's hard to sell instruments without some sort of exposure. Exactly, and this gets it sort of in the back area. Yeah, no. Well, I tell you, I think Cole and probably.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, I got a couple people, one that will wait here.
They only grabbed a few things and put it in their purse. So.
Oh, really?
I want to talk to you. There's a pantry store over
They
there.
don't have a business card, do they?
You want me to go see if I can?
Did they have a business card? You guys have business cards?
If it's gonna sell, I'm sure they'll go. If it's not gonna sell, they'll go. Yep. So again, talking about the off-site, we used to have a naval air station. And that was used primarily to go through and practice aircraft takeoffs and landings. They did not have hangars out there, so they did not have permanent aircraft that were stationed out there. Folks from Alameda and whatnot would fly up here. They had practiced their landings and whatnot. They ended up flying back home. When that closed down in 1954, it became a raceway. And my father, God rest his soul, but he used to go out there when he was a teenager and a little bit later and watch the drag races out there. They converted the runways into drag strips. And they also ended up converting it into a raceway, if you will. And it ultimately ended up closing down in 1972. That's all north of us. If you want to go through and take a look what's left of it, it's up where Target is right now. Completely paved over. There's Target. Yep. So there's no remnants, there's no memorials or anything like that. But again, it's for that local history out there. Looking across the street, Papa Murphy's. That used to be our second post office. Well, as I said, it kept on moving. And I think that, they're probably the original post office was inside of one of Robert Ross's buildings, right off the plaza, if you would. But, the first established one that we ran across was one of the former models. That's the second one. The third one, and the current one, is by Oliver's. Okay? My youngest used to work there and really enjoyed that particular facility. Yep. Yeah, so the Great Raceway, the wooden one, was over by the Smart Train station, just to the west of it, just west-south. This one was up by Target. So again, we've had several different iterations. We've not, obviously nothing permanent, but used to end up having at least a number of aficionados that were out there, and you can find that on the web, particularly with the track races. So let's go ahead and cross the street.
Yes, you know. Good.
Because I was trying to remember her name. I was trying to think of Margaret Hahn. And I don't remember if she was in this building or that building.
So, this behind us, set back, is the original Cotati library. And who's pictured right here is Marguerite Hahn. Marguerite Hahn was a local mover and shaker. I believe she was a mayor at one particular point in time. She was very, very prominent in local politics.
Which one?
Marguerite Hahn, the one that's sitting.
Oh, the city one.
One of my co-anchors doing this sort of thing out there said that was the most imposing woman she'd ever run across in her life. Marguerite Hahn actually was very dedicated to what she was doing and actually passed away in the middle of an interview that she had on film. So she was the original librarian that we had out there. The library moved to right across the Mona Park city limits and down into the city. It's been in three places. And again, the feud between Cotati and Mona Park. Cotati used to be the big city, now it's Mona Park, Cotati. Exactly. Yeah, she was. She had come. Ordinarily, I don't give that part of the speech. My cohort does. She's not feeling well today, so I'm trying to ad-lib that particular part right there. She was a mover and shaker. She has a flat in the Plaza area. She also has a park that's named for her over just to the east off of Old Redwood. So we're just about done, but again,
I want to get back.
Are you taping this whole program?
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
good.
Oh,
good.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I want to share it on Facebook or put it on Facebook.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Oh, okay.
Help yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
predate and around when the racetrack was around back in the 1920s. A lot of these garages are spring, and this was one of several different stages. The folks that had kids back in the day, like I did, this was eventually driving school. So you did driving down here and you see all the kids that were congregating around here. Driving training. It's been a glass shop and whatnot right down to the side. Cotati has always resisted having big business on it. We have one big box store in the entirety of Cotati, and that took a city resolution vote to go through and have that put in, which is roads around the park. Otherwise, we have no big boxes around it. Now, one could argue that Oliver's is going to become that, but Oliver's doing that. That used to be the original place, and it's grown bigger and whatnot, but that was not the original big box. Yeah, it's part of the city, but I don't know. Like this photo that I'm trying to find right now. There was a truck refurbishing place called Clinton and Gal. Looking back a couple of illustrations, I just yeah, exactly. So let's go around the corner here. Actually, her family used to own that. In the corner over there, the flooring is still that wood that ended up coming out of the raceway. So again, a little bit of history, and it comes down to that. We spent too much time on this particular part. Let's move around the corner. We are just about the end of the tour.
used to use that veterinarian there for the dog beef.
Difficulty because the doctor owned both the doctor's office, where he was writing the prescriptions, and the pharmacy. Back in the day, the FDA did not make a big deal about that, but that was one of the ones they did. Coming into Cotati myself, I saw Cotati Rexall drugs, and I was thinking, oh great, I need to get some diapers for my kids, formula and whatnot. Nah, it's just a sign that they ended up having up there. The building, number 70 out there, actually was originally a manufacturer of chicken incubators for chicks and whatnot. It was actually world renowned as far as that particular part. If you take a look at the front, it looks like it's masonry that's on the front. It's not. It's actually stamped tin. If you go up there and take a look at that, you'll see that the pattern is the same from brick to brick to brick. Stamped tin. Yeah. And if you are familiar with Cotati, you'll know that just beyond where we were, there's the Cotati Hub Cyclery. That was the original place where it was at. And so they've moved that sign from there across the street from where it is right now, and then now to its current location. All right. And so the last place I have to show you. So this is built out in 1904. So this particular church was built in 1904. It became part of the mission heirloom in 1914 and became its own parish in 1918. In 1961, shortly after the bypass was done for the Cotati grade Highway 101 pass, if you passed by that, you notice that spire. It's up there. That's where the new St. Joseph is. That's where they sold to the Korean Baptist Church. They've done a wonderful job of being able to go through and maintain it. They treat it the same loving care that the original folks had out there. Now, the breezeway that's over there and the rectory, those were added in later on, but this was originally out here.
So this is the St. Joseph Catholic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, served the parish well back in the day.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. If you want to find out more about Cotati, first of all, inside of the wagon, we have some guides that are out there. They're not in the same order that we ended up taking the tour, but I invite you to go and take a look at that. They're free. Please go ahead and take care of them. If you want to end up coming back to the museum, we end up having a guide, small town guide that was put together by Prue Draper, who was one of the main chronologists, historians about Cotati. And that's on sale for $20, no tax. And I recommend taking a look at that. I think that's in there as well. Marie, the Cotati book. Yeah, but underneath it, I think there's another one. The actual Cotati book.
That they can buy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm with my kids.
Yep.
It's what, $20, Mike?
$20.
Yeah.
No tax, nothing like that. If you go to Amazon or whatnot, you're going to end up paying more than that. So it ends up benefiting the Historical Society. to be able to go through and take your walks like this and whatnot. And there's additional things out there. I've still got additional pages out there that we're not going to end up going through and walking through, but I encourage you to go through and take at least a look at that and figure out a little bit more about Cotati. And I thank everybody that showed up today. My mother has a saying, which is the people do the party. And this was a wonderful party. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, you're a great guy. I learned a lot. So much.
I learned from you too.
It was sensational.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming all the way out with me.
Absolutely.
I live in San Diego all these years, and you know, we go by here, we do it.
Drive right through it.
Yeah, right there, that's it. That's all that used to be. So you go back home now, or you stick around here?
I've got a family that's down in Nevada.
Okay, so it's not too far. Oh, a beautiful day to do an event for family. Well, enjoy.
When you mentioned Prue Draper's,
Sorry.
Prue Draper's name, that reminded me of the bronze redwood tree and the albino redwood tree.
Okay. Okay.
And you can't miss it because it's got, you know, the yellow leaves in it.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
And I wouldn't believe you if you hadn't shown us. It clearly said that it was naval.
I got receipts.
That's fascinating. I did not know. I learned so much today.
Thank you for. I'll be in touch with you. I really would like to go through and trade a little bit of knowledge with you. I'll be happy to go through and send you the deck too. So you can take a look at that. Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go lunch.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.